Good morning, fourth graders. This is chapter 15. So just to recap what we learned in the last chapter, we learned that Dale is now being held as a fake suspect, so that they're hoping that if they do that, the real murderer will kind of come out of the woodwork. So they've pinned it on Dale, but they know he didn't actually do it. Right now, we're about to come into Mr. Jesse's funeral. So that's where we're starting right now. Chapter 15 is called A Spiritual Curveball. As it turned out, Mr. Jesse was way more popular dead than he was alive. Lavender, Dale, and I showed up for his service early, only to find the church parking lot was packed. People streamed towards the glistening white church in busy, crooked lines, like ants heading for a sugar cube. The church's windows arced like a couple of praying hands, and a graveyard meandered all the way down to the creek. Lavender adjusted his blue tie in his truck's rear view mirror as Dale peered out the side mirror and raked his fingers through his hair. "That tie looks good with what's left of your black eye, Lavender," I said. "Thanks, Mo," he said. "You look nice, too." I smoothed my black dress with pockets on the skirt, and I ignored Attila Celeste, who nudged open the door of her mother's white Cadillac and looked our way. "Hey, Dale," she said, drawing out the words. "You look nice." It was true. Dale had selected his most outlaw-looking funeral ensemble. Black pants, black shirt, black flip-flops, black tie. She swung her legs out of the car, like her knees and her ankles were glued together, and she pushed her blonde hair back. Dale veered towards her like a compass needle towards magnetic north, and he grabbed her door. "Well, aren't you sweet," she said. "Sorry you couldn't come to my party last night." "Yeah, me too," he said. She invited him, and he didn't even tell me? My stomach rolled over like a dead fish. She smiled. "And Dale, I'm so sorry about before." Before, like when she tried to scam me out of my life savings and she scared Dale half to death. Like before he was the most famous kid in Tupelo Landing. Dale blushed. "Oh, that's okay. This is the church that me and Mama go to," he told her. Like she didn't already know. "Mama plays piano and I'm singing today. I hope you enjoy it." She dropped her honey pie expression. "I don't see how you can stand up there and do that," she said, her voice going frank. "That's really dark. And it's so hard." He rocked on his toes. "Oh, singing's like racing," he said. You get as much ready as you can, you step up to the starting line, and once they roll that checkered flag, you just let it go. Attila's mother minced towards them. "Straighten your skirt, Anna," she said, looking switchblades at Dale. She led Attila away, and Dale stumbled towards us like a sleepwalker. I punched him in the arm. "Hey," he winced, rubbing his arm. "What was that for?" There was no point in mine explaining. "Are you really singing today?" I asked. He nodded, looking pleased. "As far as I know, this is the first time an alleged suspect has soloed at the funeral of the dearly departed. Besides, Mama didn't have time for anybody else to get trained," he added, as the big-haired twins roared by in a red Mustang. Lavender waved at them as they swerved away from him. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Poor Lavender, first a wrecked car and now this. "They probably didn't recognize you," I lied. "I'm pretty sure you can't drive and think at the same time if they're those girls." He gave me a half-hearted wink, and then he looked at Dale. "I still can't believe Mama let you ride out of Mr. Jesse's in handcuffs," he said, shaking his hand. "Dale's got a bodyguard now, that's why," I said. "Yeah," Dale said, "some short guy that sweats a lot. Mo spotted him behind an azalea. We call him Plainclothes Phil." "A bodyguard? Woo! You're a regular celebrity. No wonder all the girls are after you." "I envy you, little brother," Lavender said, watching the twins link arms with Tink Williams and stroll towards the church. "I couldn't get a date right now if my life depended on it." "Yes, you could," I said. "I'll go out with you in just about 7 more years." He smiled. "Thanks, Mo. I better go talk to Sam, see what's going on with the car," he said. "I'll see you two after the service." As he threaded his way into the crowd, Skeeter and Sal drifted by. "Mr. Jesse's friend and her husband just pulled up," Skeeter said, nodding to a dark sedan. "Good work," I said, pretending not to watch, as the large woman in a flowered dress climbed out of the car. "Thanks." Dale and I entered the church to find most of the pews full. Miss Rose sat at the piano playing old hymns. "Ooh, Mama looks like an angel," Dale whispered. And she sounded like one, too, playing all those prayers for Mr. Jesse. We slid into the front row, right beside Miss Lana. The huge mirror behind the piano gave me a view of everyone behind me, the whole town, and then some. My eyes lingered on the strangers as I performed my upstream mother scam. Nope, nobody looked like me. I scanned a second time, hoping that the colonel would just stroll in with his dress uniform, his hat tucked beneath his arm. Why would he stay away right now? And why hadn't he called yet? I bet the murderer's here, Dale whispered. Star thinks so too, I said. Star was dressed in an iron gray suit, crisp white shirt, and a black tie, and he sat on the very last row, with Mrs. Retzel by his side. We rustled to a silence, and the Reverend Thompson strode to the pulpit, black robe billowing. I slipped my pad from my pocket as he prayed. Amen, he said. And then it was Miss Lana's turn to take the pulpit. Looking stately and black, she stood strong and sad as she waited for our eyes to find hers. Jesse Tatum was our neighbor, she said. He shared his life with us, he shared his meals with us, and he left without ever getting to say goodbye. And then came the spiritual curveball. This is our chance to say goodbye and to tell each other what we have learned from Mr. Jesse, she said. The good book always says to lead with a child, so let's start with Mo. What? When Miss Lana had told me to think about what I learned from Mr. Jesse, I thought it was just something people say, like, always look before crossing the street or don't put your elbows on the table. She smiled benevolently. Say whatever's in your heart, sugar. Sometimes I swear I could kill Miss Lana, but then who would I have? I faced the congregation. Lavender sat on the back pew. Attila sat to my left. Mr. Jesse's girlfriend to my right. Grandmother Miss Lacey Thornton shared a pew with Skeeter and Salamander. A gaggle of strangers, including plainclothes Phil, crowded the door. I'm Mo LeBeau of Desperado Detectives. I was used to Mr. Jesse, and I guess I'll miss him, I said. I'm sorry he's dead, but I'm glad I found the murder weapon. Nice, Dale whispered. One thing I learned from him was, even if you're stingy, you should tip good. Finally, I'd like to say, if you are the murderer, I said, looking around the church, the Desperado Detectives will hunt you down like the dog that you are. Thank you! Straight from the heart, Miss Lana said. Now you may call on someone, honey. Not me, Dale whispered. Pick a suspect. Ooh, a suspect. That was a brilliant idea. The double-chinned lady with the jealous husband, I said, pointing to Mr. Jesse's girlfriend, and I winked at Lavender and sat down. Me? She sputtered. The crowd turned. I barely knew Jesse Tatum, and my husband does not have a jealous bone in his body, she said. We were at shag contest in Myrtle Beach the day that Jesse died. Anything else that you've heard is an absolute lie. I scribbled a note on my pad. Ask Skeeter to check her alibi. She pointed to Anna Celeste, who rose, smoothing her blue sundress. Mr. Jesse taught me to dress neatly because people talk behind your back. Bless his heart. How about you, Sally Manta? Sal stood, her face framed by a halo of tight curls. I hardly knew him. I call on Dale, she said, blushing. He gulped. Me? Sorry, Dale, she said. I forgot you might be the murderer. She looked at Miss Lana. May I have a do-over? I call on Fez. Fez popped to his feet, his round face glistening. He loosened his tie. Everybody thinks Mr. Jesse was cheap, he said, but he wasn't. Every Saturday night, he slid $100 under the church door. He did it for 11 years, that I know of. Even in hazardous weather, he did it. The church erupted like a hive of startled bees. I looked in the mirror to see Joe Starr lean forward, his hands on the pew before him. He studied the crowd. What? Mayor Little cried. Jesse Tatum made donations to the church? It's true, Thez said. I saw him do it. Thank you, Thez, Reverend Thompson cried, jumping to his feet and throwing his arms up. Let us pray, he boomed over the hubbub. I looked in the mirror. Everybody in the room bowed their heads. Everybody except for me and Joe Starr. At the end of the prayer, Dale strolled to the piano, closed his eyes, and began to sing. Amazing Grace is right. When Dale sings, even the wind stops to listen. As his last crystal sound died away, the congregation rose and headed to the door, murmuring like doves. One moment. Murmuring like doves. I, on the other hand, trailed Thez. At the choir loft, a hand sneaked out of the shadows. Psst, Deputy Marla hissed. Come over here. Hey, Deputy, I said, watching Star slip inside Reverend Thompson's office. Her grip was cold against my skin, and I twisted my arm against her thumb the way Mr. Lee taught me, and pulled away. You scared me. Sorry. She smiled as Star closed the door behind him. The pattern of her close-fitting summer suit blended with the diamond shadows of the choir's loft small window. She's good at surveillance, I thought. Good at hiding. Look, I had a feeling you wanted to tell me something yesterday at Priscilla's, she said. I'm sorry I had to rush off, but my work is kind of like that. Is everything okay with you? Kids don't usually ask about cold cases, even if they are detectives. Don't tell her, a voice inside me whispered. But why not? Everybody in town knows about me and my past. I was thinking about my upstream mother, I said. She went missing about 11 years ago, and I've been tracking her ever since. That's how I got into the detective business. Ah, so that's your cold case, she said, your mother. Her eyes went soft. That's tough. She studied me for a moment. I'm sorry, Mo, we really don't handle cold cases. I shrugged. It's okay, I got it covered. You didn't let me finish, she said. We don't handle cold cases, but if there's a very specific piece of information I can help you with, or if you need a sounding board, please come see me, and I will do what I can, as a professional courtesy. Then she grinned and winked. Just don't tell my boss, she whispered. A professional courtesy for me? Thanks, I said, and she faded back into the shadows, and I headed for Reverend Thompson's office. Good afternoon, I said, pushing the door open. Sorry I'm late. Before Star could react, Reverend Thompson waved me in. Come in, Mo, he said. We're just answering some questions for Detective Star. They're about Mr. Jesse's contributions, Thez added. Thanks, Reverend, I said, taking my place beside my fellow detective. Star cleared his throat. You say all of Jesse's contributions were in cash? Yep, $100 bills, Reverend Thompson said. I didn't know who they were from until recently, and I never really tried to find out. The first one came with a note. I opened my clue pad. A note? Do you still have it? Star snapped his pen and glared at me. He looked sharp in his suit, starched, pressed, and shined. Some people look like they were born on a clothes hanger. Not me. I look more like I was born in a dryer. Mo, Star said, you can stand in on my interview, but you better be quiet, otherwise I'm clearing this room. You got it? I nodded. Do you still have Mr. Jesse Tatum's note? He asked. The Reverend. I rolled my eyes. What was my question? No, Reverend Thompson said, but I can't tell you what it said. It said, keep this money quiet, or the rest goes to the Episcopalians. Episcopalians, I wrote. Did that strike you as odd, Jesse Tatum leaving you money? Yeah, Jesse never attended our church, even as a visitor. Not even when there was free food, Thez added. But grace happens, the Reverend said. Jesse could have been a believer, but not a churchgoer. Or he could have felt guilty about something and felt better sliding a little just-in-case money under the door. Tell me about seeing him for the first time, Thez, Star asked. Thez glanced at his father, who nodded. It was an accident. My cat Spitz had gotten out again, and I was looking for him as usual. And you saw Jesse Tatum? I saw him sneak up in the moonlight and slide a white envelope under the door. After that, I stalked him out for a couple of weeks. It was him, all right. What did you do with the money? Star asked Reverend Thompson. The Reverend smiled. Well, first things first, I thanked God for it. Then I put it in the bank. We bought paint for the sanctuary and updated the baptistry, mended the roof. You're welcome to look at our books. No, that won't be necessary. How much money are we talking total? Reverend Tomlin reached for a calculator, punched in some numbers, and whistled. Let's say 11 years, that's roughly $50,200. I gasped. Where did Mr. Jesse get that kind of money? Joe Star snapped his pad shut. Good question, he said. Where indeed? That night, I grabbed my pen and a notebook. Dear upstream mother, death makes me think about you. Everybody has a way of believing. The colonel says that God took Sunday off, so he does too. He walks in the woods or he lies in his bunk. He says if God needs him, he knows where to find him. Miss Lana believes in treating people right. She mostly hits church festivities like Easter, when she can wear a new hat, and Christmas Eve to cry while Dale sings Silent Night. Dale goes to church because Miss Rose likes him to go. I sometimes go to keep him company and hear stories of the original Moses. Miss Rose plays the piano, and I sit with Dale and his grandmother, Miss Lacey Thornton, whose alto runs true as a rusty fence. My voice is like a turkey gobble crammed into a corset, but nobody's told me to stop singing, and I'm not shy. Lavender, who I will marry one day, believes in NASCAR Zen, which I suspect he has made up himself. He says, the car is the body, the driver is the awareness, zipping in and out of traffic, and the Zen is everything of it. Track, car, self, other drivers. You focus without thinking to win, he says. You feel it. It's one reason that I love racing. What do you believe? Please let me know. If you're wondering about me, like Miss Lana, I believe in treating people good, and like the Colonel, I think God can find me if he needs me. Love, Mo. P.S. The Colonel still hasn't called, and today makes 3 days. Miss Lana says not to worry, that she's handling it, but I'm worried anyway. Where is he? Why would he leave us when there's a killer on the prowl? He has to have a good reason, but what reason trumps keeping us safe? If you see him, please tell him to call home. From Mo. That's chapter 15. Very juicy.